Welcome back, everyone. All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling something I know every single one of us has wrestled with in the digital classroom at some point, and that is taking a rigid generic lesson plan and transforming it into a truly human-centered, engaging experience. We're going to unpack some absolutely brilliant insights from Jonathan Acuna Solano, drawing from his work with the British Council's Materials Adaptation course. Honestly, this is all about how we can shift lesson adaptation from being this tedious technical chore into a genuine act of connection with our adult online English learners. So let me just ask you this. Have you ever experienced those dreaded, soul-crushing blank stares from your adult learners in an online class? You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You enthusiastically present an activity, and you are met with total silence. Cameras mysteriously start turning off, or you just get that polite but incredibly superficial participation. It is so frustrating. But Acuna Solano suggests something really interesting here. This isn't a failure on your part as a teacher. It's actually a profound disconnect between the materials you're using and the actual human beings looking at them through the screen.
Think about it. Generic textbooks often treat learners like they're completely blank slates. They ask them to discuss hypothetical situations or entirely irrelevant topics. Nobody wants to talk about imaginary playground friendships. Contrast that with the complex, messy realities our adult online learners are actually navigating. These are people with established professional identities, real workplace anxieties, career aspirations, and serious ethical dilemmas. Asking a corporate professional to do a role play that was clearly designed for a teenager isn't just ineffective, it's honestly borderline absurd. It completely ignores the high-stakes reality they live in every single day.
So, to fix this, here's the game plan for our explainer today. First, we'll look at the Adult Online Challenge. Second, we'll cover human-centered pedagogy. Third, we'll explore why fluency has to come before accuracy. And finally, I'm going to give you a highly practical adaptation checklist. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Adult Online Challenge. We're talking about navigating disengagement in the virtual classroom. Look, in online classes, there's already this inherent emotional distance built right into the format, right? We're separated by screens, sometimes by thousands of miles. Acuna Solano points out that when we use irrelevant materials, like making a room full of professionals discuss something infantilizing, it creates what he calls a sudden draft of disengagement. It's like a chill just enters the Zoom room, and it quietly but completely destroys their willingness to participate. Adults really resent feeling intellectually underestimated. If the topic doesn't connect to their actual lived experiences, they are going to check out, period. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I do not have the time to create highly customized materials from scratch for every single class. And you know what? That is entirely fair. We're all stretched thin. This is exactly where we can use artificial intelligence to do the heavy lifting. AI is fantastic for generating prompts, providing structural frameworks, and churning out initial task ideas. It is a massive time saver. But, and this is a big but, the magic only happens when you, the human teacher, step in. You have to filter those AI outputs through your own pedagogical judgment. You're the one applying contextual awareness because only you understand your learners' unique, complex realities. You use the AI's framework, for sure, but you adapt the content to fit the human. Moving right along to Section 2, Human-Centered Pedagogy, our theoretical bridge. Let's dig into the underlying educational theory to understand exactly why bad materials create such a vast emotional distance between the screen and the student. So, the science behind that awful silence we were just talking about, it goes back to Stephen Krashen's effective filter. Think of this as an emotional variable that acts literally like a wall in the brain. When a student feels disconnected or anxious or intellectually underestimated, boom, this filter goes up. And when it's up, language acquisition is completely blocked. No learning is getting through. When we infantilize adult learners with generic textbook topics, we are actively raising their anxiety and shutting down their ability to learn. Strategic adaptation, therefore, is exactly how we lower that filter. And this idea aligns just beautifully with a core philosophy from Paulo Freire, who said, education should humanize rather than dehumanize learners. Teaching a language is never just about transferring grammar rules from your brain to theirs. It's about recognizing our adult learners as fully formed, complex individuals. They have rich histories, they have very genuine insecurities, and they have valid voices that deserve to be heard. When we adapt our materials to respect who they are, we are literally humanizing the virtual classroom. Okay, let's jump into section 3, fluency before accuracy. Here we are prioritizing meaningful interaction over mechanical perfection, and this addresses a major everyday tension every language teacher faces. There is a huge tension between these two approaches. Traditional accuracy focuses really heavily on grammar manipulation and constant correction. But think about an adult learner for a second. They probably already carry some deep professional insecurities about their language skills. Constant correction shoots their anxiety through the roof. It can absolutely destroy their willingness to speak at all. On the flip side, we have communicative fluency. This focuses on negotiating meaning. It actually creates room for imperfect language as long as the core message is understood. And that builds massive confidence. Acuna Solano argues that, especially in an online setting, we absolutely must prioritize expression. We have to allow for imperfect but genuinely meaningful communication. Now, don't get me wrong here. Prioritizing fluency definitely does not mean we just throw our students into the deep end without a life vest. Not at all. This brings us right to Lev Vygotsky's concept of the zone of proximal development. We have to provide scaffolding so adults feel safe enough to tackle challenging tasks. And this can be super straightforward. Step 1, provide a solid vocabulary bank. Step 2, offer some sentence starters just to get the gears turning. And step 3, use guided prompts. These structures naturally lower that anxiety we talked about, so the adult learner can focus on the meaning of what they're trying to say, rather than having an internal panic attack over the mechanics. But here's the catch. Scaffolding should never, ever eliminate the intellectual challenge. That is a crucial distinction. Adults need high-level cognitive engagement that connects to their real lives if we want them to stay motivated. Depending on their specific CEFR level, we need to guide them from that basic, concrete survival language all the way up to abstract debate, interpretation, and real critical thinking. They should be comparing ideas, evaluating situations, and solving problems. If the lesson is just repetitive drills with no real communicative purpose, that adult learner is going to get bored, and you're going to face quiet resistance. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 4, the adaptation checklist. These are the actionable steps you can take for your very next lesson. Inspired by the British Council course and his own extensive years of teaching young adults and working professionals online, Acuna Solano developed a brilliant 12-point checklist for evaluating our activities. It essentially boils down to this. Effective adaptation requires a truly meaningful communicative purpose, highly contextualized language, absolute relevance to the adult professional, deep emotional and cognitive engagement, proper scaffolding, and, of course, giving room for learner identity and agency. So let's break this down into a condensed, highly practical filter. Think of this as your pre-flight checklist right before you finalize any lesson plan. Ask yourself these 4 questions to start. First, is it meaningful? As in, is the activity genuinely communicative, or is it just disguised grammar manipulation? Second, is it relevant? Is this content intellectually mature and truly adult appropriate? Third, is it collaborative? Are the students actually responding to each other and negotiating meaning, or are they just taking turns talking to you? And fourth, is it supported? Did you build in that vital scaffolding we just talked about? And to finish out that checklist, ask yourself, is it appropriate? Is the language actually contextualized for their specific CEFR level? Then, and honestly this is a huge one, is it engaging? Will your students actually want to talk about this topic? Will it spark genuine opinions, or maybe a little healthy human tension? Moving on, is it confidence building? Does it lower that affective filter by prioritizing fluency over absolute mechanical perfection? And lastly, is it cognitive? Does it encourage real critical thinking and personalization, allowing them to express their genuine beliefs rather than just reciting a safe textbook answer? These questions are your safeguard to ensure you aren't just testing memory, but actually training real-world communicative resilience. Bringing this all together, Acuna Solano perfectly summarizes this entire approach. He says, effective adaptation is about recognizing learners as human beings whose voices deserve to be heard. Adapting a lesson plan isn't just about tweaking a PDF or swapping out a few vocabulary words. It is a vital, humanizing tool. It's how we bridge that digital divide, how we foster genuine connection, and ultimately, how we empower our students to confidently use the language in their actual complex lives. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought, a little challenge for your preparation for tomorrow's class. When you sit down at your desk to finalize your materials, ask yourself, will my next lesson plan simply test their memory, or will it inspire real human connection? Use the checklist, contextualize the learning, and I promise you, you will watch the engagement in your virtual classroom completely transform. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy teaching, everyone!